Hello, my name is Debbie Boone, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, The Bend, where we explore how successful people navigated the path and emerged in a better place when life threw them an unexpected twist. It's inspired by one of my favorite sayings: the bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the curve. These conversations will hopefully help you and inspire you to embrace your personal bend and to flourish. I hope you enjoy it, and if you need help with your own personal navigation and you're in veterinary medicine, please feel free to reach out to me at Debbie Boone to Manage Vets Consulting. Enjoy the bend and be inspired by our wonderful guest. Welcome. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Bend. I'm Debbie Boone, and I'm your host. And today I have a longtime friend of mine, Beckie Mossor. Beckie is a registered veterinary technician, the current president of the National Association of Veterinary Technicians in America. She has a diverse veterinary background, including clinical practice, management, and academia. She is a practice management coordinator in the veterinary technology program at Appalachian State University. She is also the co-host of the podcast Veterinary Viewfinder with Dr. Ernie Ward, another neighbor of mine up the road, because we live very close to each other. She is also the founder of the Veterinary Industry Giving Tree, which won her an award. When was it? Last year, year before, Beckie?
Oh gosh, we were the first year, so I think we were 2021.
Yeah. But Veterinary Industry Giving Tree is a nonprofit organization that she developed to help members of the veterinary community during the winter holidays. And I think I was like member number 5 for that, because I thought, well, this is really a great idea, where there were members of our community out there really struggling to, get their kids a little Christmas gift or just pay their rent during the holidays or any of those things. And you're able to create this great program and get help for them. And you're just special, Beckie. You just are.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm in a very special profession where I'm so sorry. Of course, my dog's excited and enthusiastic to say how special I am too, and I'm lucky to have that support.
Yeah, I locked mine out of the bedroom because it's time for him to eat at 4:00, and he starts telling me at 3:30. So yeah.
Well, my husband's homesick, so I am on dog duty today. But it sounds like he's coming together now because he knows he knows. But I was trying to be responsible anyway. I appreciate that. I have a very special profession, and our profession is made up of special people. And so when I get to honor those people, and when I get to help our already great profession just be better, or maybe bring longevity or joy, I don't know. I feel like I'm the one that gets the gift there.
Yeah. That is my favorite thing, is just like making life better for our group. And I think it's just such a great profession. And when people tell me that they don't like it, or they're unhappy, or they wouldn't do it again, it makes me very sad.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, right? We have an amazing profession, and it's not an easy one, and we don't make it easier on ourselves.
Yes.
And I think if we did that, a little bit more of that, and found our joy, in our professions, because you're right, it's heartbreaking to hear when people fall out of love with what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think we need to talk more about the joy.
Yes.
That's my firm belief. So let's talk about some joy here today, girl. Let's talk about how you got started and what possessed you to move down this pathway.
It's funny. So ever since I was a really little kid, my grandfather would tell me I was going to be a veterinarian or a farmer, because I think he definitely didn't know about veterinary technicians, and he just knew I was going to work with animals, right? But in that kind of way. And so it was kind of always something that was in my head, but I was really intimidated by my profession. Like, I thought about, could I see animals hurting? Could I help animals when they were scared? Like, there's a really tough side to our profession that was something that held me back for a long time. And even, could I be successful in college? So, into my 20s, like my early 20s, I was just kind of a job hopper. And it's like cute to say jack of all trades, master of none, but it's kind of like, or, if I just, so it's always just kind of been a hard thing for me to jump into and to take that leap. But when I finally did, I found a college that was really nearby me, and like, I fell in love with what I do. And it sounds so cliche, but then kind of from there, I just continued to say yes, right? Like I looked for opportunities, and when I had them, I said yes. And it's literally brought me to where I am today.
Yes. Yeah. I,
Yeah.
that's just it. Some people are, I gave a little lecture yesterday at one of my client clinics, and I said, you can't be afraid to fail because that's how we learn and that's how we grow. And it's got to be okay to make a mistake. And other people go, it's okay, we'll dust you off and help you get back up on your feet and go. And we have a tendency as human beings to look to the negative and go, oh my God, look at, she failed. And here are the consequences of failure. So I'll never try that because I don't
Yeah.
want to do that. But saying yes to things that you're uncomfortable with is certainly the way that you move forward in your profession and get where you need to go. And there's a lot of uncomfortable things that I'm sure both of us have been through. I always think about the very first presentation I ever gave. It was at the North Carolina conference, and I swear I hung onto the podium. I thought I was going to pass out, and now I can stand up there and just give 5 hours of lecture without blinking. And I'm sure you could do the same thing. Um, yeah. So tell me, like, you talked about the challenge of settling into a profession. What was your toughest challenge?
Literally just confidence in myself. Um, it's literally what you just said. If you don't try, you can't fail. And school was not something I previously excelled at. And I didn't have a strong desire to be at school when I was a kid. And unfortunately, that's our perception of what college and higher education is and becomes, and it isn't. And so I really just didn't know that I would be successful at school. And I was very intimidated to try and then fail, because there's kind of no excuses, like there's other people involved when you try something. You're like, oh, I had terrible training or like whatever, but you can't fail a whole school like without having being the common factor. So I just didn't want to not be really good at it because it was really serious. And I love to tell this story, but I also kind of hate it because I don't mean to sound self-fulfilling or to criticize people who have excelled in their skills or started out by learning on the job. But I was offered a job in a clinic that I declined because when I went in the back, I was like, I can't learn this on people's pets. Like I was like, there's
Yeah.
no way, because I want to be really good at this before I were to take somebody's beloved pet and like do something that I'd never done before.
Mhm.
It seemed kind of almost like not being very truthful
Mhm.
in presenting myself. Like nobody comes in the room and says, "Hey, are you good with my friend over here learning how to stick your dog's jugular for the first time?"
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? No one's
That's
signing
not
up
going to
for that.
happen.
Not
No.
really an informed consent situation,
Yes.
right? The
Yes.
way we think of it. So anyway, I didn't feel good about that. And that's when I found tech school, because I thought I really do want this job, but I want to learn how to do it really well.
Mhm.
Um, so then it kind of came, how bad do you want it? And can you just be brave enough? And it's that saying yes. It's like just taking that moment and saying yes, I can at least try. And I found that I was very successful at it, and I was good at it, and I loved it. I didn't have any previous clinic experience before I went to school and fell in love with my profession.
Mhm. Sometimes I wonder if some of the people who are struggling so much in the profession, if they had worked in a clinic or just even shadowed a little bit and saw what it really is like to do the work, because I mean, as the hiring manager, and you've hired people just like I have, people come in and think that they're just going to play with puppies and kittens all day, that everything is, goodness and light. And it's really sometimes very tragic. And even people who are good pet owners, things happen that you like, oh my gosh, I had one of my very favorite pet owners. He had just come in and had his dog completely vaccinated. It's always there on time. Goldie was his golden retriever. He went home and started cutting down a tree, and she just decided to take off through the backyard. And this tree, he felled it, and it fell on her and killed her. And this was like an hour after he had been to the vet. So even really good pet owners, stuff happens, right? Stuff happens. And I sometimes think you got to be able to emotionally manage that as a medical professional and not dwell on it to the point of your own detriment, because there's got to be this kind of emotional barrier that you set that says, I can't take on all that pain, right? I have to be very clinical. And I know they teach it in human medicine. And sometimes I think I don't know, you're a teacher. Do you teach it? Do you talk to your students about it?
So the way that I talk about it and approach it is in the form of resiliency. And because I think that resiliency is really kind of the root of getting through those moments and
Mhm.
kind of having that quick bounce back. There is some form of compartmentalization, I think that I'm not so sure you can or should teach,
Right.
right? But I think some of it's natural. But I think kind of leaning into resiliency in terms of um, recognizing that in yourself, working on that, and kind of knowing um, how to fill that bucket, but also dump that bucket
Mhm.
to be able to maintain it is how I approach it with my students because um, I think we do paint a lot of our profession kind of tragic. And I know you said focus on the positive, but we
Mhm.
do. And it's funny because it sometimes feels like we paint it as black or white in terms of like puppies and kittens or like euthanasia, right?
Mhm.
It's like it feels like, but we really live a lot more in the in between.
We
We
do.
live a lot more in the happy visits, the successful visits. While they become almost mundane, we don't count the number of successful surgeries that we do. And how can we really focus on that in our clinics, right? And like, in factories it's like x number of days without an accident, right?
Mhm.
And you get a safety bonus,
Mhm.
x number of patients without a bad incident,
Yeah.
and we're getting a safety bonus, right? Like there's so many ways we can really build the resiliency and the focus on the
Mhm.
positive. And we say so focused on the positive, then I think we aren't waiting for that shoe to drop in a way that we don't have resiliency because we just stay kind of
Yeah.
beat down.
Yeah. I've always thought, and of course, I've been doing this for 40 years, so I've got you beat. But I've always thought that it was very much cycle of life, the circle of life. We are, it's a compressed circle that we work in, but we see that. And I always try to help my staff look for the puppies and kittens that come in after the favorite pet euthanasia. And I would say, watch for it. It happens every time, and you'll see it if you start to pay attention. And I think the thing is, humans have negativity bias, so we always want to focus on the
Yeah.
tragic. But if we start to pay attention, and then even when we have that one challenging client that you only care about the money, of course, I have, again, 40 years, folks, I've been hearing that. So it's
Always.
good. My theory is, even if you gave it away for free, somebody would complain. So that's just humans. But we need to pay attention to the wins, and we do not focus on the wins. And so I was in this staff meeting yesterday with one of my clients, and I said, before we leave today, I want you to tell me about the wins you had in the last 2 weeks. Tell me about your wins.
Yeah.
And at first, they all just kind of sat there like, well, I don't even know what to say about that. And then they said, oh, well, there's that cat, and then there was this dog, and then there was that, this and this. And so it started to pile on, and they really started storytelling in there. And, we were talking a little bit about story branding and storytelling before we got on air. And I feel like if people had that skill set, if they started storytelling more in the practice, our mind is so suggestible. It gloms onto whatever we feed it. And we
Yeah.
need to be consciously feeding it more wins and more reality than
Yeah.
constantly letting it see only the negative. You see what you want to see. And I feel like that's one of the reasons I've always enjoyed the work. First of all, I love the science of it.
Yeah.
I really love the science of it. But I also love the connection with clients and the way we can make people feel when they walk out the door with a healthy animal, and that
Yeah.
collaboration between
Yeah.
us and the pet owner. And I feel like the people in vet med who do humaning and petting and animal stuff really well are the most successful in the profession. And it is a people business first.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I think for some people do really like people
Mhm.
and they do like the education aspects and they do like working with clients and they really are the kind of unicorns you're looking for because they are very resilient to the people part of things. We've got some folks who are really they can just hardcore deal with anything, get through all of the science and the medical, but when it comes to the people, they're just a hot mess.
Uh-huh.
And you've kind of got to have that trifecta no matter what you've got to.
Mhm.
um and I know some people have themselves in kind of a niche little space where maybe they don't, but even if you don't work with clients, you probably work with someone,
With someone.
and
That's right.
peopling is peopling no matter what.
Exactly.
And either way, even if you completely work by yourself, isolated every day, you don't talk to another human, whatever, fine. There's still a positivity, negativity context to how you approach your day and look at your day. And I like to tell my students, even from the days when I taught in person, we started a class with "Tell me something good." And so they started to look for good things to share. One, because I think they knew the more they shared, like the less teaching I'd do. I think they thought I wouldn't catch like 45 minutes of sharing the good things meant less teaching. I had them like by the third time, but I even do it now in my online class. And it is partially just so I can know what's going on in my students' lives and engage with them. But another is let's like talk about what's good and focus on what's good and to know and what they do is sometimes it is truly just like I took a nap this week and it was so good, and you're like, yes, that is equally as good as you're closing on a new house or you bought a new car or you went on a vacation with your family. So kind of starting that habit early with my students. And then in clinics, I always tell them start the day with what went well yesterday. And when you do that, people are walking out the door thinking about what went well so that they can share tomorrow. And they're coming to work thinking about what went well so they can share when they walk in the door. We can leave a lot of the bad behind and really just get in our brains about what was the really best part about it and sorting through it. And like you said, just kind of retraining, rewiring. Your brain is so flexible, rewiring it, not to ignore the bad, but to make sure you're outweighing it
Mhm.
and focusing and giving yourself as much emphasis on the good. Like we always remember the mad client, but we don't focus on the 3,500 clients before that
That's
who
right.
were thrilled and the candy and the flowers and the thank you cards.
Yes.
One upset client. Just
Yeah.
like you and I, when we speak, one bad review,
Yes.
one anything less than 5 star, and we're like,
Yes.
I'm a failure.
Yeah. Yeah. I can remember when I was teaching all the Patterson classes, we used to do a survey after it was over and send them all out. And at one point in time, I wasn't seeing them. And then I thought, I need to see these things right after because I do the same class the next day. Let me see if I can make adjustments. And most of them were very, very positive. And then there would be one or two that you go, really? Were you in the same room with the other 50 people? But
Yeah.
then there were also really good suggestions. Like these
Yep.
were things that I needed to listen to and fine tune my own skill set with. So being able to take some criticism is also part of the adaptability that we need to be able to just do all the things that we do. And I was just reading a new book called Shatterproof, and it really talks about the greatest skill is resilience, but resilience is good for short term things. But the greatest success for long term is the ability to adapt to different and changing situations. And that's very similar to what we were talking about in failures
Yeah.
because we make adaptation. That didn't work, so
Yeah.
we adapt to the next best thing. So I want to talk about some of the stuff that you have just done because I'm in the middle of helping get NAVR off the ground, which is the North American Association of Veterinary Receptionists, having no clue how difficult it was to start an association. You started a charity. Was that pretty challenging to get your nonprofit going?
Not ish. Yes, because well, so no, because I had no expectation. And I think you had me on talk about the tree. And so I think I've told this, but like I told my husband, like, we might have to buy Christmas for like 70 people this year. Like I might have I might have really screwed up. But like you said, you were there, you showed up. So many people showed up that it made it very easy to know that this was a thing and that it was needed. Keeping it going is the real challenge, right? When it was a brand new idea and innovative and it was 2020 and people were really in their giving, it was easy. Mm. You know, it's a recession now. There's so many more, there's like more and more and more nonprofits and places to give and ways to give and needs to give. Mm. We're on the back end of like several natural disasters. Mm-hmm. You know, companies are cutting back on what they can give, and other organizations have to get some of that money too. So right. The challenge has really been staying going, keeping interest and meeting the need, because that's the part that has increased consistently. Yeah. The support hasn't declined, but it has to grow. But again, the expectation was, I didn't even know what I was doing. So I think like with you guys starting your organization, you have this vision. Mm-hmm. And so rising to a vision and hitting goals is much harder, I think, than like rolling the dice and saying, well, no matter what happens, it's more than nothing. And that's what we're doing right now. Right.
Yeah, right.
So I think that's the big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and of course for CSRs, we had nothing. And so you're right. I mean, even if we had a little something that did something that got some recognition, it was better than nothing than we had presently. So yeah, it was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be, but a great deal of satisfaction has come from it. And then the other part of that is this: all of a sudden, people have picked up on the idea that there should be conference tracks for people who work at the front desk of a veterinary hospital.
100%. You know, I would say when I very first entered the profession, there was a lot of bubbling about veterinary technicians, right? Mm-hmm. And then probably by like 5 to 10 years in, veterinary technicians are like the top conversation. All the organizations, everybody's like, we got to get somewhere in the middle of that. I was like, we're leaving behind and underestimating the need to educate our front of house. Mm-hmm. In all the different forms, mm-hmm. you know, that we have, from management to folks who maybe are in the whether they're answering phones, whether they're doing all of the things, because we have such a vast amount of clinic setups to where even some of our assistants are working at the front desk a part of their time, right? Yep. And then maybe they're only getting medical information, but they're not getting any of that customer service training, right? Like, and I was like, we're leaving them behind, and they're going to be the next big thing. Yep. And here we are, like, yep. And so I predicted it. Yeah. And I'm glad, right? Because these folks, it's like it feels like a no-brainer. Like, they are the first and last interaction, but like they are the ones that help do tons of comforting and informing with our clients. Really get a vibe, I guess. Mm-hmm. They set the vibe, right, with our clients. They do. Yeah. I always say they're going to open the ball, right? They tee up the ball. Yes. Yeah. Yes. So the client's either going to be shut down by the time they get to the room because of their interaction, right, or they're going to be opened up and relaxed because they're like, oh, this is great. They really set that tone for what the whole experience is going to be, I think. Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I worked the front desk when I was starting, and I started as a part-time CSR, and I had a lot of hospitality and restaurant experience coming into it. So that was very helpful for me. And I had been trained in that kind of customer service as a child, but I trained all my staff in customer service. And then when I got out into the world, I thought, wow, people, no wonder clients are mad at you because
baby, you're setting them on fire. This is bad. And it was not intentional. It was just a lack of knowledge about actually how to work with the public and approach people and read them appropriately and react in the right way, and help be kind of their tour guide through the hospital for the medical stuff that they were getting into, because that stuff was scary to them, right? Because they don't know about things. And recently, I called March Momageddon because my mother was in and out of the hospital about 5 times. And she's 91. And honestly, she's like the Energizer Bunny, but all kinds of things were happening. And I got a real deep experience of what human health is like, and some good experiences and some very negative experiences. But I thought, what if a person who did not have the medical background that I have was trying to navigate this? This would be what our clients were feeling, because there were terms and acronyms and equipment and questions that my mother could not have answered for herself.
Right.
And she's
Right.
sharp. I mean, she's 91, but she's like on it. She was a business person forever and had run several corporations. But that doesn't mean she was medical. And our clients feel that kind of same way. So teaching our teams to really take it down a notch and watch people and see if they get
Yeah.
it. That's the part of it. Do they really understand what's going on? I do want to touch base on like your big medical challenge. So how are you?
I'm so good.
Good.
Um, I am thriving. I'm pretty much back to, I mean, I'd probably say 95%. Um, I'm so lucky, but things are pretty much healed up, normal, functional, mostly the same size most of the time.
Yeah.
But overall doing really good. But it's like you said, I mean, it really gives you a lot of insight into,
Hmm.
how much you have to advocate for yourself and how scary things can be. And how that loss of autonomy feels and how much we take it for granted
Hmm.
within the clinic, that we are calling the shots and we know what's happening.
Yeah.
It was quite a journey, but I'm doing outstanding.
Good,
Thank
good,
you.
good, good.
Yeah.
For those of you in the audience who don't know, Becky was in a motorcycle accident, and oh my gosh, she's lucky she's alive. But the first conference, you showed up in a wheelchair the first time I saw you after your accident. And now here she is, just back up to snuff again, almost 95%. So she's a miracle walking around. We're very glad that it worked out for her so well. Uh,
Yeah, thank you for
big
that.
challenge.
It's been like, it hasn't even been a year and a half. So I think about it, it's like 17 months, and I think about like 4 of them in a wheelchair. So how amazing the body is, and how amazing, just talking about resiliency,
Yeah.
right? And how much our mind affects. And I had so much support and love through that time. And it means, it really does mean everything. And I think that it does remind us of how much people need love and support in those
Mhm.
hard times. And our clients are not the same, are going through the same things a lot of times, to your point. So I feel like I have built up some empathy a little bit, and probably some stronger communication skills. But there's a level of life resiliency that comes with those kinds of things, where I'm a lot less rattleable these days.
Mhm. Yeah. You just got to take things in stride. So if you can get through that, you can get through anything.
It's true.
As a breast cancer survivor at the age of 46, you kind of go through that and go, well, you know what? I'm still here. There must be a reason I'm still here, and I'm just going to keep on chugging along. So, yeah.
That's the thing too, is that when you talk about, and it's the important thing about storytelling, we were talking about storytelling earlier, right? Is so frequently when people find out I was in an accident or whatever, and they're like, oh gosh, it was so terrible. And like, oh, I've nothing like that have ever, but I survived cervical cancer or breast cancer, and I'm like, well, that's super similar. like at any point in time when your life is outside of your own hands. So I think it just brings the importance to front of like everybody does have a story. And like Chick-fil-A uses it in their marketing, right? And their marketing
Yeah.
training is that like understanding that everybody's going through something you don't know about,
Mhm.
you know? And it sounds so cheesy to say like live in that, but like really when you live in that,
Yeah.
the more I tell my story and talk to people, the more I hear other people who are survivors.
Yeah.
All of us are in some way survivors of something
Mhm.
super crazy, terrible. Maybe it's here or there to each other, but it's relative to us as being incredibly traumatic and extreme. And we all have that in common. And
Mhm.
it helps bring empathy when you look at somebody who says, I don't know what it is, but you went through something, you've been through
Yeah.
something. And to maybe lower the expectations of our clients sometimes when they are going in maybe not being their very best self.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can look back and say, how was I? When I was
Yeah.
dealing with that stuff, or
Oh
was my
yeah.
family that because my family was trying to support me and get me what I needed during those challenging times. And maybe they weren't exactly the friendliest but they were pushing to get their person help, and that's what our clients are doing too. If they feel like we're stonewalling them, they're pushing to get something that they love, some help. And when we one of the best CSRs I ever had was this guy named Dwayne, and Dwayne really looked like he should be playing football rather than at the front desk.
I love it.
But he worked the emergency clinic. And I said, Dwayne, I get so many compliments on you. And I said, how do you calm these people down? Because anything on emergency is just usually a hot mess coming in.
Yes.
And he said, I just try to tell them, I got you. You don't, you can lay the burden down. I've got
Yeah.
you from here. And
Yeah.
people are just so relieved that there's somebody that's going to take them by the hand and move them through the process and take care of their pet and get them care. And then also kind of be with them as their coach and counselor and not that medical person, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just the guy at the front desk, but the
Yeah.
kindness is there and you can feel the kindness.
It's so funny you say that because when you're in like a really bad traumatic situation, you don't remember all of it. And there's a lot of things I do and don't remember. But one of the things I remember the most was one of the firemen who got there very first asked if I wanted, he asked if I wanted to hold his hand. And I had no idea that I did want to hold his hand until
Uh-huh.
he brought it up. And I always
Yeah.
thought that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And the amount of comfort that brought, and you're kind of saying like the proverbial hand holding, and I'm kind of saying like it was true hand holding, but the comfort it brought, that connection it brought from like this grown man who's like a fireman who's there to like be a fireman, instead, yes, he had to ask me questions. Yes, he had to, but his first thing was to connect. And it
Mm-hmm.
was so meaningful. And so it made everything after that a little easier.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think is such a beautiful way to think about it is can we hold their proverbial hand or even maybe realistically hold their
Realistic,
hand
hold their
because
hand. Yeah.
that connection in a really tough time,
Mm-hmm.
it can be it can be
Oh,
everything,
yeah.
truly
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was teaching the Patterson classes, one of the questions I used to throw out to the teams was, how do you know when to hug your client? Because you don't, right? Some people will just drape themselves over you. There is no option and they're just falling apart. But other people are kind of stoic. And so what do you do?
Yeah.
Because you want to offer comfort and still not and respect their stoicism because they don't want to fall down. So my cue was always, it's fine to touch somebody on the arm,
Yeah.
like the forearm or on the shoulder. But
Yeah.
that's an appropriate touch. But it says, I'm here. I care.
Yeah.
Handing people a tissue, something really, very simple like that just shows that you are there to help and that they're not alone. And then it's up to them to decide, how much more helpful you actually can be. And there are
Yeah.
some people that you're like, please let go of me. Right.
Yeah, and that's your clients and your team,
Yeah.
right? That's both because sometimes you need a little hand holding to get through a day
Mm-hmm.
or a visit or, whatever it is. It's a really beautiful thing to think about. How can I reach out and touch this person, and what will make them feel better in this
Mm-hmm.
moment? That I can't fix their problem.
Oh,
And that's what empathy is, right? Empathy is not trying to fix the problem. We're not trying to make a bunch of solutions to fix it. It's just saying, I'm here right
yeah.
now and I have space for you and this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I do want to touch base on because I was listening to Veterinary Viewfinder. And for those of you who haven't listened, you should listen to it because they're always like really interesting subjects that you and Ernie throw out. So the one that caught my attention was the one about influencers and teaching. And as two people here who have really been in the clinical practice and done all the things, I feel like we are legitimate to get up there in the stage and say, this is how I did it and this is how it should be done. But there are other people out there who are just really good at social media and have they really done the work. So talk a little bit about that. I mean, that was pretty brave of you and Ernie to come up with that subject.
So it's funny because that was a landmine of an episode that I had no idea I was walking on. because truthfully, we never come from a place of like true. I honestly don't come from a place of like criticism, judgment, even though it really comes off. It sounds like that. Right. We're very like conceptually thinking like, hey, I've noticed this trend. A lot of how that conversation started was because number one, some of these conferences have started asking about the number of followers when you're applying for a speaking gig.
Yeah.
So when you're putting in your abstract and like your CV that shows all your published and education and textbooks, right? Then they want to know like how many people do you have on social media? And it's like, where does that fit in here? And how come that should even be like a leverageable situation? But it was taken very much, I think, personal in the sense that we were saying social media influencing and education cannot overlap.
Uh-huh.
And that was definitely not what we intended to put out there, because there is a lot of great education that happens via social media. There's a lot of, and the other thing is, I don't think all social media or influencing needs to be educational.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it's fun, it's fun. Let it be fun, right? The question is simply, if there's no experience behind it, is it truly a content expert, or is it somebody that just has a wide network and that's why butts end up in the seat?
Mm-hmm.
And does that translate into education in the space? Because if you're just going to listen to somebody because of who they are, not what they have to say, how does that come back and influence your clinic or your clients or do better in your practice? So conceptually, that was it. And then also there had been some trouble with a recent conference where an influencer got themselves in a little bit of trouble, kind of canceled, and got pulled from a conference like that day that happened. And that was kind of part of what had also brought it up. Is I was like, man, if you were the conference and now you have to make the decision morning up. So all of those things factored into this conversation. And here's the thing. I tell people a lot, like, don't be nervous about speaking because you're not pretending you invented this content. Mm-hmm. You're just delivering it passionately. You have knowledge in it and you deliver it. I do lectures for Beringer on diabetes and heart disease, but they're very specific about how methods, mode of action with the drugs work and things like that. But I'm not a VTS in clinical practice or in emergency and critical care or cardiology. So I just don't want to come off as like a total hypocrite and saying like you have to have written the textbook on it to speak on it, because I don't believe that. I'm just saying, is there anything behind what you're speaking on? Because there's some folks out there. It's like if I tried to speak on zoo medicine, I could speak on cardiology because I know this drug and I've worked on it, and I'm going to explain to you that this is the limits of my knowledge. We're here for a sponsored talk, right? Yeah. I'm not here doing like a cardiology symposium. But like if I tried to go lecture on zoo medicine, I'd be really, I think, stepping over any kind of boundaries. And I think that's maybe a little bit more of
Yeah.
what we were, kind of
Yeah.
getting at. But whew, we started, and truly, like I said, we had no intentions of hurting people's feelings or starting a firestorm. We never do. We just like to bring up these conversations because it's, to me, worth exploring. And exploring it means that you can come out and say, no, it's not a problem. There is no problem. And we weren't even suggesting there was, but like, honestly, if you teach them what to say and you give them a script, they're fun to watch. People love seeing them. It brings them joy. Then it's totally worth it. And it's like,
Right.
cool. Then that's
Yeah.
what it is. We
Yeah.
weren't labeling it. We're saying like, is it? What is it? Let's have this
Uh,
conversation. Let's
yeah.
start a little debate. And boy, we started a debate.
Did you really? That's interesting because, I thought about it when I listened to it and I thought, this really does make sense because you and I both know, and if the audience doesn't know, let me tell you, to get something race approved is a
Yeah.
complete pain in the butt. I mean, there are so many hoops you have to go through to get this stuff done. But if you speak at a conference, the conference kind of does it for you, and you don't have to go through all the hoops. So
Yeah.
if these things are being race approved and credited to our licenses, I have to have it for my CVPM. You have to have it for your RVT. Doctors certainly have to have
Right.
it for their license. Then is this content making us better clinicians, better practice managers, better CSRs? Is it, or is it just fluff and fun? And if it is fluff and fun, then maybe it doesn't need race approval, and it maybe it's just entertainment, for the events, because there's
Yeah.
certainly these people certainly do draw a crowd, and I get that.
Sure. And I think there's a lot of room for like keynote speaking
Yeah,
when you've got folks that are really, or panels, when you've got folks that are really excited to, or, like I think about like Caitlin DeWild, who is social media, talking about social
right.
media, helping people do social media. Like that to me makes perfect sense. Like
Yes.
that's it's what she does, and she's helping other people do it and then using social media to do
Mhm.
it. Susan Little, is doing amazing education out there on oncology and helping get, you know, no, not Susan Little on
You're talking
oncology.
about Sue Ettinger.
Thank you.
Sue
And you're
Ettinger.
wrong too,
Wrong side.
right?
Yeah.
The cancer vet, right? Like I always see their at in my head and I
Uh-huh.
have to remember real people's names.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I just I think that it should just be considered and used appropriately. And most importantly, I guess like most important overreaching is we shouldn't be kicking out people who have amazing content, who have worked really hard, who are going to better patient care, if they don't have enough likes or followers
Yeah.
or utilize social media. Like I don't think that social media should necessarily be a factor in what CE
Yeah.
is being delivered and how. And that's truly it. It's not like a who or what they do or don't.
Right.
It's just like
Right.
and is it fair for conferences to be leveraging other people's social media because it's easier for their own, marketing, right?
Marketing. Yeah.
It makes
Yeah.
more, so
Yeah.
it's not dumb. It's smart for them to do it, but when I'm thinking about as a manager, if I'm giving somebody dollars
Mhm.
for conferences, I'm interested in what they're going to see, what they're going to come back with, and how
Mhm.
it's going to benefit the clinic and advance my team. That's what my dollars are going toward.
Mhm.
Continuing education is not an entertainment benefit,
Right.
right? It is absolutely a benefit, but it is 100% one that I want to make sure my employees are coming back with great education. And somebody might have 1 million followers and do great education. That I'm not saying they can't or
Right.
don't, right?
Yeah.
It's just that you want to feel and you just want to pay attention to, I think, that, and like you said, the race approval of it all, and just the focus of direction of conferences,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm. Yeah. I don't go to many conferences like I used to, and I don't speak at many conferences like I used to. It's a lot of work. I don't think people used to come up and say, "Can I have your slide deck?" And I go, "Nope, it's 40 hours of my work behind that." Not to mention the fact, if you look at the slide deck, I don't put much on them. I mean, there may be a
Yeah,
picture or a couple of words, but it's
right.
not about that. It's about the
Yeah.
lecture. And so it's not going
Yes.
to do any good anyway. And they go, "Oh yeah, I guess you're right," when they really think about it. I think it's just kind of a habit.
It's right. It's so innocently it's
Yeah.
requested, right? Like
Yes.
100%. I've had that happen as
Yeah.
well. And I've asked it of other people, not even thinking, like, because you're like,
Right.
oh, I just want the notes. And you're like,
Right.
yeah, no,
Yeah, that's
no.
what the proceedings are for. Just go reading the
Yes.
proceedings, and most of the
Yes.
stuff is there, so you can take care of it. But yeah, I think and I certainly would not discourage people from speaking at conferences or wanting to go and speak at conferences because, you know, truthfully, if you're comfortable in front of an audience, you get comfortable. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to have that much interaction with people. It's a lot of fun to talk about people, about stuff that you're really passionate about and sharing it and making things better for people. But you know, for some people are better speakers than others. And I laughed and said, you know, people have told me I'm pretty good. And I said, well, I've seen so many bad ones that I thought, please don't let me get up in front of people and bore them and read my slides and do all those things. Let me at least be kind of educational and a little entertaining at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's like when you go to a concert and you see a singer and you're like, man, they're just so talented. And you don't think about the fact that they've got a vocal coach and they're spending hours a week practicing their vocals and
Yes.
improving their instrument. And then they're in their dance classes and they're on fitness things. Like there's so much training that goes
Yes.
behind it. You know, we get up there and it's a show, right? Like
Right.
we've got the Easter eggs, we've got the jokes, we've got the punchlines. I know where to stop my timing as a way of being impactful. So I have speaking techniques, I have audience engagement techniques, and I have the knowledge of the material. And it really hits, right? It's a show that way. There's a whole performance that has to go into being a great speaker and putting on a great engaging lecture, being vulnerable, being willing to sit in the silence why people don't respond because you need to get them to break through that moment, you
Yep.
know.
Oh yeah.
um Coming over like technology, okay, well, everything just went terrible. Now I've got to give my presentation without my slides,
Yep.
without lights on, in a 92-degree room, in a 35-degree room, like, you know, you
Yep.
name it. I think I'm yelling over like a bar next door or something because something crazy is going on. So it truly is work, and it is something we put a lot of time and energy into, because the thing is, the other thing I think people don't realize is like, you're not up there for yourself. You know, maybe some people are, maybe some people like hearing themselves talk that much, but like, I'm truly up there because I'm passionate about what I'm talking about. And I really believe that whatever I have to tell you can make your life better, can make your practice better, can make your patient care better.
Mhm.
And I'm excited to convey that to you. And I put a lot of time and energy into doing it in a way that's going to be valuable to you, because if I'm otherwise, I'm wasting my time.
Mhm.
I think some people think you just get up there and say some words and, you know, and you might, but no one's coming back and no one learned. Nobody remembered because they
Right.
were all on their phones because you lost them well 2 seconds into it. So
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
put a lot of time into it. I'm really proud of myself in the speaking career I've developed, and then just my, you know, over the years watching so many people come along. In fact, this past weekend I was at the North Carolina Association of Vet Techs conference out of App State, and one of my students was speaking for her first time. And you know, it's just beautiful to see that kind of full
Mhm.
circle. Watch them grow up through their career and get to that point in their
Yeah.
career. So
Yeah.
it's an awesome experience, but it's not as easy. Nothing's as easy as it looks.
No, if
We
it
make it look
looks,
easy.
you should, yeah, you should make it look easy, but it's not easy. It is not easy at all. So Becky, you've really done a lot of cool things in vet meds. Looking back on all the things you've done so far, what's the thing you're most proud of?
I mean, the giving tree is absolutely the thing I'm the most proud of, because it's the thing that I think it's something I never expected to do. It focuses on people, which was never really my focus. I know how important it is to feel seen. I know how important it is to just sometimes get a breath of fresh air, or to get a little leg up or some help. And the tree does all of those things. And so I'm 100%, I'm most proud of that. But on top of that, outside of that, just because we've already talked about it, so it feels like a cheap answer, I would definitely say it's been um, my opportunities to advocate for my profession. So between the podcast, being president of NAVTA right now, being part of and president of my state association, the opportunities that I've had to speak for, educate on, and defend, and truly to speak for my profession, I'm incredibly honored to have done that and to be able to do it for so long. I think means I'm doing something right. You
Yeah.
know, like I would have been shut down a long time ago. But instead, you know, when I encounter people, especially like around the podcast or articles I write, you know, they'll say that I'm the vet technique that like puts her feet down and you know really digs into my beliefs, and that's so meaningful, and I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud that my words resonate and inspire my profession. That how like who gets that? How cool is that?
Cool is that? I know it still surprises me when I'll have managers come up and go, "Oh, I followed you for years and I've read
Yes.
your stuff and I admire you and I'm a big fan." I'm like, why? I just like, huh? Really? Why?
Yes, right. It is true. And we're on year 8 of the podcast now. Like we've been
Y'all been
it
doing
has
it
been
for a
it's
while.
wild.
Yeah.
And so I forget that anyone listens to that podcast. Like I just it's just embedded in what I do. I talk to Ernie for a half hour a week.
Uh,
And then you know you meet people who listen and they're like, I feel like we're best friends. And I'm like, we are. Like I'm so you know, I'm so moved when people listen to it or feel inspired, or when I get to meet people who have met me every week for the last 8 years, you know, it's so cool.
yeah, there's so many good podcasts out there in the world. And I guess it's a little frustrating for me because when you work from home, I was always listening to my podcast driving. And
Yeah.
I don't drive anywhere much anymore. I just came back from Lumberton yesterday, so I got to listen to a book back and forth there. But I miss the opportunity and the time to listen to as many things as I want to listen to because we have so many good opportunities to listen to people talking about the profession. And then, the other thing is outside of the profession, there's a lot of really cool podcasts and audiobooks and things that we can listen to that get us outside of our little tunnel vision workspace and get us out into the world and listen to the ideas that other people have to make and then bring them in to vet med because I tried to do that a lot in the work that I do, especially with neuroscience and how the brain works and behavior things and bringing that into management because as you know, I managed a long time and getting the people part right is the challenge. It's not the medicine. The medicine is very much scientifically proven, cut and dry. This is how we do things. But the peopling part, man, it's a crapshoot. It can change every day.
Creating profitable practices is not an issue. It's getting everybody to like it's into doing it too, right? It's like
Yes.
that's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people part is hard. You know, I teach my students about the neuroscience of change in the brain and how, you know, literally your brain resists change. It's like, I don't have the resources, the glucose, the time, the energy. No, no, you know? And so when we realize how the brain works, and like you said, there's so much opportunity. Plus, I think it's important, you know, Ernie and I have been talking about this quite a bit lately, is just sort of understanding how like the economy is going to affect your staff lately and all of the news that's going on about like it's scary stuff and how that's going to affect your staff who's like, am I going to have a job and am I going to be able to afford, you know, nobody can afford eggs, and that's like a joke, but then it's kind of like it's not though.
Right.
And our teams are struggling and we're worried about recession, so we're not maybe trying to spend a lot of money as practice owners. So I think partially just being aware of what's going on, like what your teams are hearing about in the news and like what the language is, and not getting in that echo chamber of social media is super important because right now is a time that we have to give them like a lot more security inside the clinic than they've probably ever needed,
Mhm.
just because everything outside is
It's
so
just
scary.
everywhere.
Oh, it's so scary and unsure.
Yeah. Yeah. I work with a clinic in San Francisco and there's a huge immigrant population there. And as people's family members were worried about being deported, then there was a lot of stress and anxiety in the practice and the making sure that we could talk about those things and have discussions and just acknowledge that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is a scary thing that people don't
Yeah.
know. And I have a longtime good friend who is a veterinarian and a CPA and a consultant. And she's originally from South Africa and she's been here 30 years as a US citizen.
Yeah.
And she says to me, I'm really afraid to go out of the country that I won't be able to come back. And I went, oh
Right.
gosh, that seems so incongruous with the way I would think that if you are from not born here as a US citizen, maybe you do start to think about those things. And that's affecting our clients and it's affecting our staff and even not maybe them directly, but people that they know and care about. And all of those things. And you fix it? No, you can't fix it, but you can talk about it and you can
Yeah.
acknowledge it and say, we
Yeah.
get it. We get
Yeah.
it. And if you,
Yeah. And, I tell folks too, even if you don't know somebody, you might just be an empathetic person who is really struggling seeing this happen
Mhm.
to people.
Uh-huh.
And also kind of, I think we have this generation who's trying to reconcile that this is happening, that have never lived with this kind of layer of uncertainty. We have, I think, an older generation who has
Mhm.
to some extent, and then this other generation of like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And so there's just so much, it's just everyone's so uncomfortable. And so I think just recognizing that
Yeah.
everything is scary and uncomfortable right now. We're not a family. I don't love that language in clinics, but we can create some stability and have stability here and have honest conversations and create that psychological safety and not have that attitude of like, oh, get over it, or whatever, and buck up. you know Recognizing that extra support's going to be a thing right now.
Oh, it is. Well, and I think boomer generations, which is me, we grew up in the middle of the 60s. And I remember curfews at night during the civil rights movement and race riots. And, when they integrated schools in the South. And so I've kind of been there and done that when all this
Right.
stuff was going on. And I feel like that when you go through that when you're young, and then you are on this side of it and you go, looking back, it really was hard when it was happening, but it was for the better and change happens and people react to it. And usually there is improvement. And I
Yeah.
were listening to a professor from Harvard who was civics professor there. And she talked about times of great disruption and change. And usually after the disruption, there is a time of rest and settling in, and then there's another disruption. And so I, having been in practice and working in this profession a really long time, I've been through like 4 recessions, I've been through all this kind of stuff, and we survive. People love their animals, they figure it out, we survive. And do we make change? Sure, we make change. We are adaptable, we have to adapt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise we'd still be using Adam's blue bottle flea spray on everything instead of, for those of you who don't know,
I like you dated both of us hard on that
look
one.
it up. That stuff used to
Hilaribus.
have ether in it. It didn't kill the fleas, it just put them to sleep.
We're all we're all dying of some kind of weird form
It's the
of
truth.
genetic
It's a miracle
mutations from
because of
those.
the stuff that we used to do and work in animal hospitals. Oh man. Oh gosh. Well, Beckie, as a teacher, as a speaker, as an advocate for the veterinary technician profession, what advice would you give to someone who was just kind of facing a big life decision or a career decision in the veterinary technician profession?
I think whenever you're facing a big decision in your career or in life, whatever it is number one, seek out the advice of people around you that love you. Not people who have a personal interest in your decision. When you're at work and you're kind of like, oh, it's kind of almost gossipy or whatever. That's not the place. The people who love you are the ones that want the best for you, are the people to kind of go through these things. And if you don't have a mentor or a coach in this profession, get one, because
Mhm.
you need them for those types of moments. And then the other thing would be for in terms of these big changes or big decisions, like, you can say no you don't owe anybody anything. I think sometimes we want to apply for these really big jobs and then we say like, well, what if I don't want to move, or what if I don't? Well, then don't. You
Mhm.
don't owe anybody anything. You're entitled to take up space. You're entitled to find what's best for you. So be brave, like be brave and do the big things um if they feel right for you. And if they don't, then don't. That's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah, I was at an AVMA conference a couple of years ago, and I was listening to Dr. Cindy Courtney, who has been on this, who's the jerk researcher,
Yeah.
and she was talking about feed forward and asking people to give you feedback rather than waiting for them to give you feedback. And so we were doing this little exercise, and I said, "Here's my problem. There are so many things that interest me that I want to do everything. And there is only me and a limited amount of time. And how do I say no to all the things? Because I really, really, really want to do them."
Yeah.
And so her feed forward to me was, ask if it serves your great purpose. Is this
Yes.
the thing that you are very passionate about and that you want to do more of? And does it serve your purpose? Big P goal. If
Yeah.
so, then say yes to it. If it does not, even though it seems like it would be fun and entertaining, and there are people that are doing it that you would love to work with, you have to say no. And
Yeah.
it stuck with me. And I told her, I said, it's probably been 2 or 3 years, and you probably have no idea that it really stuck with me that much, but it did. And I think it's such good advice, because there is the bright and shiny object. And if you are in your position, my position, where people tend to know who you are, they call you up and say, "Can you do this?" And you go, "Oh, I could do that." And yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
I could do that. And eventually there is no time for your own self. You're just doing all the things. And some of them not particularly the things that excite you, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've given that advice as well. Kind of just in the sense of what I've seen folks who are coming up through the circuit, right? And coming
Mhm.
up through the network. And a lot of times you start out doing that by volunteering, because you volunteer, and we tell you that, right? Get involved, get into your associations, get into organizations. And so you volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. And then then more paid opportunities come up.
Yeah.
And you hit this kind of point in your career where you're not giving as much time and energy as you want to the volunteer stuff, because the paid stuff is prioritizing, because you ran yourself broke doing all the volunteering
Yeah.
for the first couple of years, establishing yourself, right? Having that personal vision, mission, values is so important to knowing who you are at your core, and saying, does it serve that purpose for you? For me, it's very much patient care. Like, if I do this, does it lead back to better patient care? Does it affect our team's ability to have a client communication and conversation that will likely affect the outcome for the patient? But if you don't have that to trace back to, you'll start to feel so guilty, right? We feel guilty to say no. We feel guilty to walk away from organizations that we've volunteered for the last 8 years, and who will ever do it? Someone's going to do it. You've got to, but yeah, really, if you don't know, I think your purpose and your personal values and mission in this profession, or in your independent working life, you could really get lost in it and burn out on it. Because like we said, it's a lot of work. The boards and the travel and the speaking, everything we do is a lot of work.
Mhm. It is.
And plus our work.
Yeah. Tucker decided to come and visit me. He thinks he
He
has
said, Mom,
all the podcasts. Say hey
oh,
to
this is my friend Beckie's old podcast. I want to say hello.
say I have to. He is such a woman's dog. He loves the ladies. I love the ladies, and I'm so
You're
cute.
so handsome. You might as well. You
Yes.
might as well.
So we have to have a little animal on here. Okay, Becky. Well, we have talked a long time, and it's great, and I loved it. Um, any words of wisdom, any fun facts about you that people might not know, that you would like to share with our audience?
I feel like everybody knows everything about me anymore. But parting words of wisdom is number one. What I want to say to you is thank you, Debbie, because when I get the opportunity to talk about myself, I really am hoping that I'm talking a lot about the profession. I hope I'm inspiring other technicians to see that there's opportunities to do really cool things. Um, this has nothing to do with me. This has everything to do with just sort of hopping along this game board of a profession and into these really cool opportunities to speak or to write or to navigate this profession. Or to network with amazing people like you. So thanks for the opportunity to be here and for having conversations with folks who are working really hard in the profession to make a difference in some kind of way. Again, a lot of us are just doing it because we want people's lives to be a little bit better. So hopefully everyone's enjoyed this conversation and feels just a little bit inspired. And then, to just kind of remember that you have that in you to inspire people around you. We underestimate ourselves, and just being you can be incredibly inspirational. So be you and try the things and do the things. Because just like Debbie and I, we started out just doing the thing,
That's it.
we didn't land here day one. So I think that's a big one. And I guess the only other thing is, if you see me out and about and I love when people say hello. I love when people interact. A lot of times you feel shy or don't want to. And I love to hear how something I've said or done has been impactful, or what you need in terms of impact, especially during my time as president. So I guess that's all that, just all that.
All that. Well, we'll put how to get in touch with you in the show notes. And as always, thank you for all that you do for the profession and to improve the lives of all our team members. If they would just listen to you, everybody would be in better shape, right? That's it.
I
And
hope I hope a little bit better shape. I hope at least no worse for the wear.
worse for the wear. There you go. That's my hope too. Is that I didn't do any harm, and
Yes.
people picked up on some tips that made their lives better, either in the building or outside of clinical work. And then, if it makes their family life, if they understand their kids a little bit better, that works too. It all works.
That's it, right? People are people.
Yep. Peopling. All right, my friend, thank you so much. And thank you
Thank
to the
you.
audience for listening to this episode of The Bend. We will be back soon with more guests who are bending the profession for the better. So thank you. And thank you again, Beckie, for being a guest.
Thanks for having me.